what we're doing right now is we're trying to establish as amicable and as cooperative a process as is possible right now. And we will exhaust all of our administrative remedies of getting cooperation from the national security state to participate in this process in a constructive way. But if they refuse, then we will go to the hardcore kind of more litigation oriented way of getting at this, and we will apply direct citizen power to the elected representatives to get them to coerce cooperation from the national security state. We will do that if we have to. We're presently engaged in a process of trying to get this done in a cooperative manner, and you know, we you know, if you're going to give us a grade at the present time, we probably have a little less than a 33% rate of success.
Yeah, but that'll change
with the bill that we've gotten passed. So we have to keep at this. And there was a 7-year period, as you know, in the bill, pursuant to which this information was going to be rolled out under what they called specifically a controlled disclosure campaign.
Right.
That was what the term was in the statute. Yes. And that's the plan, to roll it out over a 7-year period that would have started at the end of 2023. So that they were looking toward having this information made available by 2030. So that's what we're looking at right now, and that we're going to remain steadfast in getting this done, and I believe that we're going to get it done.
This has been held secret through 14 presidential administrations. There have been a number of serious discussions. I know in October of 2008, and now that Hal Puthoff has talked about this publicly at the Seoul conference, I feel free to talk about it. There was a meeting, a large meeting of individuals called together by the Bush White House to determine whether or not this should be made public.
Yes.
And everyone went into it thinking, yeah, they divided into a number of different committees. Yeah, let's do it. They came out of it uniformly saying, no, we can't do it. Right. For a whole lot of different reasons, some of which we've already discussed, that have to do with the economic issues and the legal issues that the defense industry is facing. However, and I'm sure that the issue of the abductions came up, but I've also wondered the degree to which this presence itself is involved in our efforts. In other words, there seems to be a kind of movement more and more toward this, and they have made it clear to me that as the planet's ability to support life deteriorates, they will come closer. Mm-hmm. And if it reaches a point where all of us know we are trapped here on a planet that is definitely dying, they will emerge. And that's going to be completely asymmetrical and very sudden. The question is this: is 2030 too late for us to maintain control of this ourselves? Because it will be ceded by us if we're not quick enough.
Yeah, I think that's a very real issue that we have to deal with. That they're wanting apparently to have us do this in an effective way, of us rise to the occasion to solve some of our major problems. You know, of the thermonuclear weapons. They're clearly not going to allow thermonuclear weapons to be transported out into outer space and invade their territory with these weaponry. They're also clearly not going to allow the ability of our planet to gestate life to be permanently impaired. It's too valuable a resource in the galaxy. And they say it's not unique. It's clear that obviously that their life has been generated on other planets, or there wouldn't be these other extraterrestrial species. But it's a comparatively rare phenomenon and they're not going to allow us to destroy the capacity of our planet to gestate life. Both of these things are clear. They've been clear about it. That as you know, that the communications that have been given to by the extraterrestrial beings to many people who have had direct face-to-face encounters is, you've got to stop the thermonuclear weapons. You've got to stop building them and deploying them, and you got to stop polluting your planet. You're polluting the entire life-generating capacities of your planet. You got to stop doing this. And so the warnings have been given. People have attempted to convey the warnings, but the national security state is so locked into denying the validity of these experiences that they're cutting off the credibility of the warnings. And so
that's exactly right.
So that's what we have to try to overcome. The New Paradigm Institute that has been established now in Washington is attempting to bring together all of the people that are involved in the UFO movement and to get everybody to cooperate together to stop this kind of internecine bickering that has gone on upon occasions, the competitiveness for what people view to be limited resources for time and attention of the public. But we've got to get all moving in the same direction and bring to bear the power that we have as a huge constituency inside the United States. And this is the most bilateral, the bipartisan issue that I've ever seen in 50 years of working in the area of public interest. That I've never seen an issue where extreme conservatives in the Republican Party, extreme progressives in the Democratic Party, all the moderates and conservatives and liberals all agree that it is completely inappropriate for the national security state to be lying to Congress and concealing this information from the legislative body in our democracy. And so that we now have the support of a growing number of the overwhelming majority members of the Senate and the House in our United States Congress, and we have the general desire on the part even of Republican and Democratic executive administrations to do this. What we've got to do is address some of the reasons why they don't want to do it yet. You know, this gathering that came together in the Bush, the W. Bush administration in 2008 to try to decide whether or not they were ready yet to start to release this information, that they kept pointing out that, well, there were all these hurdles because our economic system wasn't prepared to absorb the new technology. Our scientific community wasn't prepared yet to absorb the technological information. The religious institutions weren't prepared at the present time to absorb the kind of metaphysical dimensions of this. But the fact of the matter is, people still haven't been doing the work to get ready.
Well, yeah, but I think that let's put a little period on what actually happened in 2008, because yes, those are the things that were brought up, but behind that was the reality was that the defense industry is not prepared to face the lawsuits. That's the real problem. I can tell you, and it goes beyond the defense industry. In the medical industry, there are super hard materials that have been are being used in medical implants, and certain companies are making a fortune because of the superior metallurgy that they possess, and that metallurgy comes directly from this through patent puppets who hold patents that actually are, and I presume get royalties for those patents, and those patents are actually simply technology that was discovered a long time ago, back in the 80s, and eventually the metallurgical we learned how to actually apply these techniques to metals and make these extraordinary. Now you can get a knee implant. Used to last maybe 30 years, but now you can get it. If someone who needs a knee implant or replaced metal knee at the age of 25 can get one and be assured it'll be there and working for the rest of their lives because of this. And that's where that information comes from. So that's a big thing beyond all of those, and I happen to think that everyone is prepared. And then I suspect the scientific community outside of this very arid, enclosed group of people who are working on this is far better prepared to deal with it than they are.
Yeah, and I believe also that we have examples of how to craft immunity for people. For example, in the technology now with the platforms, with the Facebook and Twitter and all these, the United States Congress was able to pass a law immunizing all of those new technological platforms from being held liable as a publisher for information that was being communicated by people on their platforms. They passed the I think Section 230 of the
230. It's Section 230. Yes,
and it gives immunity to these platforms against lawsuits for libel or slander, and so that this could be done. I mean, but the legislature has to get prepared for doing this. They have to come to grips with the knowledge that this is real, so that they can do it. And that's what we're going to do and are doing at the present time at the New Paradigm Institute in Washington is we're starting to try to develop concrete proposals as to how to go about doing this. For every argument that is raised against revealing the information because we're not ready in a particular area to absorb the information, what we need to do is to put forth, here are the steps that you need to take to get ready. And that's what we're doing now. And very importantly, we're talking about reaching out to a number of the religious institutions to really start, updating their theology. That we know that, for example, for decades, the writings of Teilhard de Chardin, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Jesuit paleontologist who was basically espousing an entire theology to really understand how the faculties that were displayed not only by Jesus, but have been displayed by the Buddha, by other major prophets, are a mutation of a biological set of capacities that our human family has. And they've been addressed in great detail in the Hindu tradition, for example, the development of these, what they call siddhas, that our human family is capable of doing, that they've been hidden and concealed, for example, inside the Catholic Church. They've been reserved for monks and people in monasteries and stuff like that to be able to ascend into these kind of higher states of consciousness and to download information and to be prescient in some other things. These are capabilities that our human family has, but the religious traditions have been guarding this.
Yes, just like the Defense Department and defense industry is guarding other things. It's time to stop guarding. I agree with you.
That's right. And so that's what we have to reach. We have to start preparing the religious institutions to be able to share these secrets with the rest of the human family, so that we can understand that we're much closer in relationship to some of these extraterrestrial beings that we see perform these kind of rather extraordinary feats. That we need to realize that our human family is closer to that than we think they are.
Danny, you're the first person I've heard say this outside of a very tiny group of people. That's really insightful, because then it gets to this, that visitors aren't really a technological wizardry at all. Comes from them. It's them. It's their bodies.
Yes. Yeah.
And their ability to use their bodies and to fully express the real power that we also possess, but we've hidden from ourselves.
That's exactly right. And so that this preparation, we should take guidance from this event that took place back in 2008 that Health Put Off is now publicly talking about, saying, okay, here are the impediments that were articulated at that time to immediate disclosure. And the fact of the matter is, there hasn't been an awful lot of progress made since 2008 in remedying those states of preparedness. And so that we need to get about doing that. And that is one of the many things that the New Paradigm Institute is dedicated to, is working out concrete plans and programs pursuant to which we can prepare our cultural, scientific and theological institutions among our human family to prepare for this. And that's what we really need to do. And that's what we're doing right now to try to alleviate the resistance to the full disclosure here. And we still have to figure out the maintenance of communication, somehow establish more direct communications with the extraterrestrial beings themselves, because you can't really allow just the national security state military people to have exclusive lines of communication going to these extraterrestrial beings. We've got to be able to develop direct citizen to citizen diplomacy. That's what we have to be able to do. That's how we did it with regard to the Soviet Union. We had direct communications going with the people in the Soviet Union to try to lower the barriers of relationship, and establish direct communications with Gorbachev to get him to be willing to dissolve the Soviet Union. We were involved in that process directly. So we need to do the same thing with the extraterrestrial beings.
It's a great regret of mine. But let's get into this right away. The axis of Dreamland's involvement with the close encounter witnesses issue has always been the witnesses, the close encounter witnesses. And I'm wondering, I've heard stories that you may be planning to present or presenting experiencers to Senate and House committees. Is this the case?
Well, as you point out, Whitley, that the people inside government structures seem to have gotten a memo comparatively recently that there has been a decision made somewhere on high to begin to disclose more information about the UFO or UAP issue. But they've not yet really gotten into acknowledging that there's ever been any kind of direct encounter with the occupants of the phenomenon. That they've kind of rigidly bifurcated the reality into saying, well, there seem to be some sort of vehicles or craft or phenomena that are displaying inordinate capacities, its speed and maneuverability, etc. But they still maintain that they have no idea what they are. They haven't even fully acknowledged that they're craft or vehicles. Now, David Grush has come the closest to it. He has actually acknowledged that there is a crash retrieval, UFO crash retrieval program that has been underway for some time in the United States government, and that they've recovered bodies of occupants of the vehicles, which they've determined are not human. Now that's a bridge that most of the people involved inside the government structures with the UFO phenomenon have refused to cross. They just keep talking about the vehicles. So that as of right now, the people who have the majority of the people who have come forward to the Senate Intelligence Committee and have provided information to the Senate Intelligence Committee have been focusing on the crash retrieval program to try to get across the line to the people in the Senate and the House, the elected members, that yes, there has been and is now going on a major active crash retrieval program of recovering craft and attempting to back engineer them. So that the two issues they're dealing with is the crash retrieval and the back engineering program. They seem to have kind of focused upon that issue to be soliciting whistleblowers on that issue. Now, the additional issue of the recovery of the bodies of any of the occupants is the next bridge that they've got to deal with. And at least Grush has acknowledged that they've recovered bodies that they've been able to do biological tests on to find out that they're non-human. They have not yet crossed the Rubicon on the issue of live occupants or any kind of direct face-to-face encounters with the occupants. So therefore, you don't get them acknowledging the Holloman Air Force Base landing. You don't get them acknowledging the Edwards Air Force Base landing of any UFOs. And you certainly don't get them acknowledging the bona fides of any of the citizen direct encounters, the many thousands of encounters, of which we have a kind of graphic detail, in very specific information from people, very many of whom are extraordinarily credible. And a number of them, officials in government, law enforcement officials, people in political office have encountered the beings, etc. But the present disclosure process that is underway in Washington, D.C. to date seems to be confined specifically to the crash retrieval program and the back engineering of the technology. They want to stay fixed on the technology aspects of this thing, and they haven't interviewed, that in talking, what talking I've done to any of the people that are involved in the program, nobody in Congress has been asking them about the direct face-to-face encounters, and they don't seem to be ready yet to come to grips with that. And I know that the Aero office is not. The Aero office has said that they're open to any communication to them about the non-human intelligence, but they profess at the present time, as you know, to have been provided no information whatsoever that has given light on any of the questions about there being an actual organic biological intelligence behind the piloting of the UFOs. And so I've, of course, in representing Dr. John Mack and having been legal counsel for the Project on Extraordinary Experience Research for a while, I've had a number of interviews with people who've professed to have these direct live encounters with the beings. And I just spoke yesterday afternoon again with Barbara Lamb, again, for example, a very widely respected person who has had direct encounters, face-to-face encounters.
Yeah,
with
I know Barbara. She's been interviewed on this show. So yes. Yeah,
go ahead. But the Congress is not yet open to taking testimony on that whole category of encounters yet. But we're poised to be able to present that information to them. But we're trying to get first through to the crash retrieval and the back engineering issue right now in front of Congress.
That has happened. Now let's go back here. We are in a situation where right now it seems to me that the Schumer amendment has recently been just gutted.
Well, they use that term, Willie, in as you know, there was a 64-page bill that was drafted by the Senate Intelligence Committee, and that it passed the Senate Intelligence Committee 17-0. All 8 of the Republican senators and all 9 of the Democratic senators approved that. It was approved overwhelmingly by the Senate. It went over to the House side, and the vast majority of members of the House supported the 64-page bill. But specifically the Republican chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, Michael Turner, he got the agreement of Michael Johnson, who's the acting Speaker of the House right now, to refuse to put the 64-page bill on the floor. And there were very specific things that were causing him to refuse to put that 64-page bill onto the floor of the House for a vote. And what he agreed to do, however, which is very important, is he agreed to put onto the floor 24 pages of the bill. And it was the same bill that came out of the 64-page bill. And there were some major differences, but what the 24-page bill did is it issued a direct command by the United States Congress, which was signed by the president, ordering all 6 of the United States military services all 18 of the United States intelligence agencies, all 32, I think it is, agencies of the United States Defense Department, and all of the private aerospace industry corporations that had any information about the UFO phenomenon or the non-human intelligence that is associated with the UFO phenomenon, to turn over all of the information that they have on this to the National Archives. Now, that part of the bill survived, and so that order has been given now. And the Library of Congress has set up a special section of the National Archives to receive that information. And all of those agencies are under a direct command from Congress, signed by the president now, to turn over this information to the archives. And now they've been ordered. They haven't put a date on the date of the turnover, but they have put a date on, in effect, the date by which they have to have it all compiled. So they have 300 days from December 22nd of 2023, which I've computed out to be, I think, around October 18th of this year, which is, interestingly enough, like some 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the national election. They have to have compiled all of the information that they have, each of those different agencies, and they have to put it into a digital format, and they need to have an index, which is searchable, computer searchable, to recover the information. And they have to designate what of that information they're willing themselves, each of the agencies are themselves willing to allow to be made public. And with regard to any of the provision, any particular piece of information that they believe ought to be withheld and not made available to the public, they have to give a specific reason for it. And they've been given certain limitations on what criteria they can use for that. Now, all of that has been passed into law, and that is operational right now. So that those of us who had been hoping that the 64-page bill would pass the House, as it had the Senate, were disappointed by the reduction of the 64-page bill down to 24 pages. And there were certain very key elements of the 64-page bill that were removed. For example, very importantly, the 64-page bill provided for the president to appoint a 9-person board that would actually review all of this information when it was handed in. And that board would make the decision as to what information was going to be made available to the public. And that board, if it was going to be advising the retention of any of the information to be kept secret, they would have to be able to justify it according to a certain set of specific criteria. Now, the change that has been made is that, and very disappointingly, the agency that is now able to decide what portion of the information, if any, will be made public, still resides in the hands of the 6 military services and the 18 intelligence agencies and the 32 Defense Department agencies and the aerospace corporations. These are the very parties that have been keeping it secret. These are the very parties that have been lying about its mere existence up to this point. So that is extremely disappointing. But the command has still been given that they need to compile the information and turn it over to the National Archives. And the National Archives has not been authorized to make any decision about what shall be revealed. So that what we're dealing with right now is, in a certain sense, if you consider the 64-page bill the 100% bill right now, and the 24-page bill to be, approximately a third of that, I would say that we've accomplished a little less than a third of what the objectives were for the first bill. So 2/3 of the bill having been removed effectively, you could argue is gutting it. I mean, and that's been used. And other people have referred to it by even more pejorative terms of what's happened to the bill.
Yes.
But the bottom line is we have an operational bill right now. So the disclosure process has begun. That process has begun now. And the agencies are, in fact, engaged in the process of gathering the information together. And they have this deadline, this 300-day deadline now from December 22nd of 2023, on which date they have to have all of that information compiled, and it has to be prepared to be ready to be turned over to the National Archives. And then what the 24-page bill says, they thereafter have to turn it over to the National Archives as soon as possible after that date. Now, whatever that means, it's not date specific. It's not even number of days specific. It just says as soon as possible. And so that's still left for some debate going on. But we do know that when the date of October 18th comes about, we'll be able to know how much information has been turned over to the National Archives. And at that point, it'll be time for the legislature to start jumping up and down and saying that, look, what's the reason why you haven't turned it all over? And how much of it have you designated as being authorized to be made available to the public? We'll have that information as of the 18th of October. And so that's the date that we're looking at right now. But in the meantime, the Senate has not given up on wanting to have the entire 64-page bill enacted into law. And so what happened is immediately after the House approved the 24 pages, and the 24 pages became law and was signed by President Biden, that the majority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, and his co-sponsor, Michael Rounds from South Dakota, the Republican co-sponsor, they engaged in a colloquy on the floor of the Senate, stating that they were completely unsatisfied with the bill that had been passed, the 24-page bill, and that they had every intention of coming back with a second round of passing a new statute through the Senate and sending it over to the House and insisting that it be approved. And so there is now prepared and in the hands of the United States Senate Intelligence Committee a UFO Disclosure Act 2.0 version, okay, which is substantially the same as the original bill. They've made some additional provisions of pointing out, for example, in the eminent domain portion of the bill, that was to grant the power of eminent domain to that independent 9-person board of review to extract the information from the agencies and extract the information from the private aerospace industries, and very importantly, to lay claim to any of the technology, any of the crafts that have been turned over to any of the private aerospace corporations. That under the exercise of eminent domain, the United States government would reclaim its authority to own that property. Now, that has been a big sticking point.
It certainly has.
The aerospace industry was up in arms basically over that, but they're not entitled to maintain private property any more than any other citizen would be. And the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution has the eminent domain provision in it, saying specifically that the United States government, as constituted under our Constitution, has the authority to exercise eminent domain over particular property, as long as they're willing to pay a reasonable fair market value for whatever the property is that they seize, and it has to be seized for a bona fide public interest. Okay, so
it'd be interesting to find out how they determine a fair market value for that particular property.
Well, it would be basically there's a doctrine in the law called quantum merit, which is that it's worth whatever the service is that they provided. If that aerospace industry provided a certain number of man hours or person hours devoted to trying to understand the technology, they could be paid for that at a fair market rate, of what it would cost to have that kind of research done.
Yeah.
But they're not entitled to own property rights to the title of to intellectual property rights to the property. That's the point of the debate right now. They want to have intellectual property rights over the technology, and that would give them the right to continue getting a portion of the value of that technology into the future for any open-ended amount of time. If that technology was ever used by anyone in the private sector or in the public sector, even, that they would be getting a share of whatever the market value was of that invention. That I don't agree with. I don't believe that they have to be given intellectual property rights to something. That's like saying that if the United States government engages, say, Boeing company to say, look, here's a craft. Tell us how this craft works. How does the propulsion system work? And that you apply your time, you devote some of your scientists' time to this, and then you tell us what the technology is and how it works. Fine, and then we'll pay you for that service, but not give you the technology. you don't all of a sudden come to own the technology just because you've been asked to do some research on it. So that's what the point of the debate really is right now. And so they've put into the language of the second iteration of the document an attempt to clarify that. And there's some kind of a negotiation going on right now between the Senate Intelligence Committee people and the private aerospace people to try to work out some sort of reasonable accommodation for them to get some kind of reasonable compensation for the work that they've done on analyzing this technology. And that's where the discussion is going on at the present time.
Have you rabbit hole?
So it could be said that it's possible that the aerospace defense industry perhaps privately lobbied the Congress, not the Senate, to create a better bargaining position for itself, and that's going on now.
That is clearly right. That is, well, actually, it wasn't even so much a bargaining thing as they're just adamantly saying they're going to refuse to turn this over unless they can be given intellectual property rights to the technology. They're not even negotiating it. They don't want to.
The reason would be is that I know of this quite certainly in a few cases. There have already been patents that have been granted on essentially false information, saying that the origin of the patents, the design and so forth, that this has been something that has been developed when it actually has not been developed but been found.
Yeah, that's part of the argument. Now, specifically that Colonel Corso had indicated that when Philip Corso was the head of the development of foreign technology in the United States Pentagon, and he has maintained that the silicon chip, for example, the night vision equipment, also the what do you call it, the technology of the light going through the tubes.
We both know what it is, and I hope some of the listeners do too.
Anyway, they apparently have, in the past, the United States government or whoever was in charge of that particular program allowed some of the private corporations that were going to develop that technology on the civil side to claim a patent to that. So there's going to have to be a negotiation about that, about whether they're going to be allowed to keep that patent or whether that was legally done or not. And that's one of the things they're afraid of, and why they're fighting back so hard is they don't want a bona fide legal analysis to be undertaken with regard to the legitimacy of that decision on the part of the government, because it has given untoward competitive advantage to those companies that got that technology
That's right.
over and above their competitors, and that's a violation of the antitrust laws. So that's part of the negotiation that's going on right now about whether or not there's going to be an allowance made for any of the patents that have already been granted. But our New Paradigm Institute is taking a very clear position that this technology, number one, there should be an absolute prohibition against the utilization of any of this technology for any military purposes. This should not be made available to military. That's number one. Number two, that we should establish a treaty with all the other nations of the world that none of this technology should ever be allowed to be used for any military purpose. If we're going to be able to make this available for civilian use and for the benefits of getting an alternative source of energy, a clean energy source, or any of the other technologies they might have, even though that's quite disruptive of the present economies, we can figure that out on the civilian side. But we cannot allow this to be used for the military at all. And that's, of course, the most profitable use of this technology is in the military.
Yeah, because it's already been used for the military extensively.
Yeah. And that has to be clawed back. They have to claw back that technology and be able to establish some kind of a bilateral set of agreements with Russia and China and perhaps India and some others that may have tried to utilize this technology for military developments. That's an area this is one of the areas for that board of review. That's why that was so important. In the 64-page bill passed by the Senate, there was a UAP records review board that they proposed be set up, an independent group of 9 people to be appointed by the president. Our New Paradigm Institute is it's the only civilian group under the name of the UAP Disclosure Foundation to nominate people for that board. And we had gone through the process of lifting up some people to be potential nominees for the president of that board before the board was cut out of the bill by the House. That board is part of the second iteration of the Senate bill now. We want to have that independent board appointed, and they're the ones that are going to be, as I said, making the decisions as to what information is going to be made available to the public. A very important provision, an extremely important provision of the 64-page bill from the Senate side was that every single piece of information that was obtained by any of our military services, intelligence agencies, Defense Department agencies, or any aerospace company, any piece of information that was obtained 25 years ago or more had to be revealed to the public. That's the sort of standard period for being able to maintain a classification of any particular piece of information. And so that was an important provision of the 64-page bill, and that only the president of the United States himself, or in the future herself, would be able to keep secret any particular piece of information that was more than 25 years old. Now, that, of course, as you and I both know, covers an extraordinarily important amount of information.
It certainly does. It's not going to happen either, because most of the work on, well, I'm not going to go into details, but a lot of the work on what is now very important weapons technology goes back more than 25 years into this area. I want to go back just briefly to the this review board,
Yes.
and there is, of course, a community in the United States and in the world of millions of people who have had contact, because somebody is not just flying around, they're actually coming into our homes, and
Yes.
we're living with this. Is there, and when I heard that and the motivation for this board, I thought to myself, surely someone from this community would be on such a board. But then I think to myself, here I am trying to bring forward the legitimate presence of a community that the people who are actually trying to do this and who are on the side of that community are afraid to admit even exists.
That's right.
So, so where do we go from there? I don't think that board can be effective unless there is someone from this community who has a stake in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are two slots still. There are of the 9 members of the board, 7 of those slots are described in the bill, in the 64-page bill. That, for example, one of the positions has to be a person who has national security experience in the government. Another one has to be a scientist, a physicist scientist that can understand these things. One of them has to be a professional historian. There are certain criteria like this that are in the bill, but it only covers 7 of the 9 positions. And there are 2 open-ended positions that would be able to be filled by an experiencer. There's no prohibition against an experiencer being there. There's no mandate that there be such an experiencer. And you're not going to get Congress to specifically designate one of those seats as a seat for the experiencers.
Well, I have to think that maybe the fact that they've been left open-ended is an invitation in a sense, because obviously they can't designate it. No,
that's right. And so that's that I've always been aware of the fact that those 2 seats are available for experiencers, and so that's we would take that into account as the New Paradigm Institute in making recommendations to the president.
Well, I certainly do hope you do that because it's very important. I know the presence, or whatever you want to call it, the aliens or the visitors, well enough to know that basically it's not going to work. Whatever we do isn't going to work unless there is some kind of give and take with the people who have already come into contact, because they've been brought into contact for many reasons, some of which aren't in our interests and others of which are. And
you could even argue that one of the 2 open seats ought to be filled by an extraterrestrial being.
I wonder if that would be possible, because there are people here who might as well be that. I don't want to go down that path,
right?
But there are such people, and I wonder if they would ever come forward. That would be very interesting.
So once you're into this world where for 80 years all of the people in positions of authority have been denying emphatically that UFOs even existed, now that we've crossed that line and we're into this world of acknowledging that UFOs are real and that there is an assumption that there is a non-human intelligence. That's the term that they keep using now, a non-human intelligence that is behind the operation of these UFOs. That the question of there being a representative on the panel a representative of this non-human intelligence, if you assume it's something other than a computer. The bottom line is that this board is being re-insisted upon by the Senate. So that's going to be part of the bill. Now, very importantly, excuse me, turning to a slightly different aspect of this is that the board that is supposed to be put in place to deal with this is going to be part of the negotiation that goes on with the House, because the House not only doesn't want, they don't want any agency independent of the private agent or the government agencies that have possession of this information right now. They don't want any independent body to exist to be able to make determinations as to what should be made public. So that is an absolutely critical element of the negotiation that's going on now. And unless and until the House agrees to allow such an independent board, the Senate side is going to be having to demonstrate that there is going to be more and more information publicly released out from under a controlled disclosure process. That means that there are some 40 witnesses now that have come forward to the Senate Intelligence Committee who have provided sworn, verified, corroborated evidence to the Senate Intelligence Committee about the existence of this UFO crash retrieval program and the back engineering program. These witnesses are now already in place. They've already provided their evidence, and they're available for public testimony. And the United States Senate Intelligence Committee has the constitutional authority to present these people in public, in the same way that the House Oversight Committee presented Colonel David Grush to come forward and assert on the public record that he is aware of a UFO crash retrieval program and a back engineering program that has been underway. So that unless and until the House of Representatives is willing to, and that is more specifically that Michael Turner, who is the Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and Michael Rogers, who is the Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee, and Michael Johnson, who is the present Speaker of the House, until these three men agree to approve of the controlled disclosure program that the Senate has proposed putting in place, and this independent review board. The Senate is in the process of preparing to start moving forward one witness after another in a public set of hearings to begin to apply pressure to the House to say that if you aren't going to allow an overseen controlled disclosure process, then there's going to be a non-controlled disclosure process that is going to be taking place.
It's not going to be non-controlled. It's going to be controlled by the visitors.
But
not controlled by us.
No, but as you know, that there's a good deal of information that is in the possession of our government already, which they are exercising the decision over how much is going to be disclosed. So there's
so far, yes,
yeah. So let's say that obviously the visitors themselves are in possession of 100% of the information.
Yeah, I assume they're a very complex, divided group. So
that's right.
It's not monolithic.
That's right. In some certain of the civilizations and the species may have a lot more information than others about the nature of ultimate reality, etc. But you assume that somehow within the UFO community, the extraterrestrial community, that they possess 100% of the information. Our government, it's not clear yet what percentage of that information is known by our government. It's probably less than 100%. It's more than 0%, as they profess. But if they even have 10% or 20% of the information, they're refusing to provide any of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we have to. We're trying to carve into that that area. If they have 10 to 20% of the knowledge, we want to find out how much of it we can get made public. And one of the questions that keeps on presenting itself is whether or not any of us that are in the UFO community, whether we're going to agree to have any of it kept secret. Is there any reason why it should be kept secret? And we obviously are well beyond just trusting the United States national security state.
Yeah, that would be unusual.
Yeah, we're not into trusting them to say, oh, just take our word for it. There's stuff you shouldn't know, and then we say, like what? And they say, well, we can't tell you because you don't have the proper security clearances, and that's not going to work. That didn't work for the Pentagon Papers case when they tried to tell us that in the Pentagon Papers case, because we don't trust them. And we don't trust them for good reason, because they've lied to us for 80 years. They've lied to Congress for 80 years. So that we're not going to take their word for it. So there has to be some mechanism by means of which we come to know what the information is that they're insisting be kept secret. And we need to make some kind of an independent judgment. Some of us who are going to be given access to that information as to whether or not we agree that there's any good reason for keeping any of it secret. Now, for example, we know that it's not appropriate to have the New York Times publish on the front page of the New York Times the intricacies on how you go about making a hydrogen bomb. That's fine, but nobody's proposing that we do that. So the question is, how do we make a determination within the UFO community if there is anything that is legitimately entitled to be kept secret, unless at least some of us know what that is and can exercise an independent judgment about that. That's a major issue that's going to